started with cartoons, then we said let's roll the rooms and get some puppets for this Bengals podcast. John Sheeran's got the brain and some say Hoji's insane, but that's the podcast, the Bengals podcast. Max Montoya liked our show, and one day we will get Joe, Joe Burrow. He'll find our facts so thorough. Our chemistry depends on the fact that we are friends, even if we're stupid. Oh yeah, we're really stupid.
Welcome to the number one Bengals podcast. I'm your host.
Wow.
I'm joined as always by Dr. Roger Electric Smoothie, and we have John Double Brain Sheeran
Double stuff.
in the stream.
Daddy,
On
that
Yeah,
intro was so pumping, was so beautiful.
thank you.
I will have to change my adult diapers.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say we have 59 and counting people in the live stream
Wow.
because we are streaming to 3 different places.
Wow.
I was even able to hack into John
So I'm not the
Sheeran's-
only one streaming.
You hacked
Yes.
into what?
Nothing. So, John, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. I think, it's.
You look
it's About
I like the
damn
pink.
Time. We got some games.
Yeah.
We got football. We got football.
Yes.
Football.
We do have football. And, John, what
My
is
word.
on your mind right now for the Cincinnati Bengals? What is the number one concern or point of joy for you? Yeah.
Yeah. Hot take.
I'll combine the two. Actually, I'm concerned about how optimistic I am about this offense because over the past month, maybe some change, they added a tight end that they didn't need to add, but is certainly going to make the room better. And they finally added the guard that they probably should have signed all the way back in March, along with Lucas Patrick. So they're about 5 months late to this competition that's happening at right guard. But the fact that Dalton Reisner is in the building, the fact that he's by far the best option that they have once he's up to speed to start, assuming that he's the same Dalton Reisner that was in Denver, Minnesota, there are no weak points on this offense. And we're going to talk about this more throughout the course of the show, but this whole concept of the Bengals starting fast, it needs to be on the offense to do that. And the fact that there are no liabilities necessarily. It's not all elite strengths like there is a quarterback, wide receiver, maybe left tackle, but there are no points in this offense where you're thinking like that's where the defense can exploit them. And we'll see if Lucas Patrick starts at right guard. We'll see if that's the case there. But the fact that they have now a solid, dependable backup, they have depth along the offensive line, which hasn't been said in maybe over 10 years. This offense is, at least on paper, what it needs to be in order to carry this team throughout the early parts of the season, especially when the defense probably needs about a month or so to really get going.
Wow.
Yeah.
John is in a positive mood. I
A
just want to
rare
say,
an expression
this is our
of
first
optimism.
season preview
Yeah.
where John has not looked like he just wants to throw the laptop at Mike Brown.
Yeah,
So,
that's why you look so rosy and vibrant, John. It's
Yes.
because
Cheers to the pink.
you've got optimism, and it's the pink too.
Yeah.
But I like the pink. So thanks for asking, Daddy. You want my take
Yeah.
about what I'm thinking about the season, I'm sure, because, I'm also on the show. Here's the thing. I can't share John's enthusiasm. Here's why. I'm going to repeat an old, sort of thing that I keep saying over and over again. Joe Burrow, our Lord and Savior Joe Burrow, can only do so much. And yeah, he can come out snapping, but once the defenses figure out the new plays, once they figure out the new thing, how many games can a team play with basically the weakest defense in the NFL? Now, the signing of Trey Hendrickson was a nice feather in our cap. It's something we needed. It doesn't solve the problem. They were bad last year, and now we have this new guy Al Golden. And I like the name, classy, but I never heard of the guy. And I don't like the fact that we are pinning all our hopes on some new dude and just imagining he's going to be great.
So here's the thing. Here's the problem with you covering the Bengals and never having heard of Al Golden.
Never heard of him.
John, can you tell him?
He was here.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
What was he?
On Cincinnati Bengals.
Linebackers coach.
Yeah.
And were the linebackers very good?
They were better than we were last year.
Okay.
John, actually, I want to ask you about the linebackers. So Logan Wilson was named team captain again. A whole preseason, people are saying,
Not
this
again.
guy...
First time.
First time.
Keep up.
And the whole preseason, everybody's saying this guy looks like he's out of gas. He looks like he doesn't, have gas.
No one says that about you, Daddy-O.
Yeah. So, John, that is the question.
But it is because of it is because of Daddy-O's type 3 diabetes that he has so much gas. A very rare. You are the only person on earth with type 3.
I actually had a fantasy draft the other day in my friend's basement, and he has this boxer dog who's only about a year old, and he farted every 5 minutes. He was really hotboxing the place, and I'm like, man, it's like Daddy-O's right here with me.
Yeah, that's in the studio.
Well,
Yeah.
So
fine. But
so
John,
what is this thing
Let's
about
go back to
Logan Wilson not having gas? Talk to us, John.
I think his performance in the preseason was a little bit exaggerated. I don't think he played great. I don't think anyone really on the starting defense played great. I think T.J. Sladen was one of the primary culprits there, but also I think Demetrius Knight Jr., who was next to him, he was kind of missing his run fits, and he was kind of out of position, and I think that also impacted Wilson as well. I'm not really having any real concerns about Logan until we see him in the actual regular season and see him play full games and everything like that. But me and him are the exact same age. I'm kind of getting up there, which means he's kind of getting up there. So I'm interested to see if his athleticism, if it starts to taper off as the season goes on. He suffered some injuries here and there throughout the past couple of years. I'm not obviously raising the red flag at him yet, but this is a big year for him because they drafted 2 linebackers in the first 4 rounds. I think Barrett Carter had a really promising preseason. If he plays well in the snaps he's given, if Demetrius Knight starts to turn it around, and after going through some of the rookie motions, you might see a changing of the guard at linebacker maybe in a year's time. But this is Logan Wilson's time right now to, again, reaffirm himself as, again, one of the leaders on this defense, a guy that obviously Al Golden had a lot of trust in when he was here last time that he was here in 2020, 2021. He was one of the main reasons as to why Logan Wilson developed so quickly as a second-year linebacker in 2020, which is arguably his best season as a pro to this day. So you're hoping that Al Golden kind of get the best out of him, use him in similar ways that he did back in the day, because Al Golden had a lot of influence on what that defense was under Lou Rumo, and he connected a lot with those younger players. So it's all kind of coming back into some of that familiar territory, and you're hoping some of that can get reinvigorated, but yet to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like the optimism.
When do we start talking about the Browns?
Well, hold on. I just a little bit
Okay.
later. But John,
Later,
I just want to say with Logan Wilson, right? The man is still young, right? Same with Jermaine Pratt. These guys are too young to be falling apart. I can't help but think when the Bengals get these D's and F's for nutrition, for the cafeteria, for how they treat families,
The spa.
right? Remember, John? Remember that player who his wife went on social media and said, I was pregnant, and the Bengals, guards. What was it? He kicked her out, and he said, "Get out of here. We don't have any food." Remember that, John? Did you see that whole incident?
I did. I do remember. It was only about a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
you remember a week ago, John?
Barely.
And so that's what I'm saying, John, is that, maybe the ill treatment of the Bengals players is making them age faster.
Yeah.
Like Logan Wilson. He should still be very good.
It's sort of like a reverse Benjamin Button, which we also just call aging.
John, please.
The average NFL lifespan is, 3-4 years? I mean, he's already in year 7. I'm not saying that he's falling off a cliff necessarily, but not everyone ages gracefully into their 30s like a certain defensive end, number 91. It
Wow.
just depends on who you
love
are,
it.
right?
I love it.
But
John,
to Daddy-O's point, I mean, the ones who do age well take care of themselves well. They do the spa, they do the plastic surgeries. We talk about your Tom Brady. So you got to keep up.
Yeah.
You got to keep up with the Kardashians.
Well, I want to go to John's little side remark, which
Yeah.
was very on point. Which Trey Hendrickson, I was messaging John about this, and he actually, I quote, he said, correct to something that I said.
Which is odd.
Which is odd. So here's what I said. I was like, when I saw what Micah Parsons got, and by the way, Micah Parsons, he has like a broken back, and he got $120 million guaranteed.
Not exactly true, but
Right.
Close
But
enough.
this guy got $120 million guaranteed, $47 million a year. Myles Garrett gets $40 million a year, right? And he is like a speed racer. He's getting, pulled over left and right. Doesn't matter. And poor Trey Hendrickson had to fight and scrape to get just $30 million for this year.
not even.
And I was saying, not even
29.
and maybe
Yeah.
with another incentive, right? And so what I was saying, I was like, John, there's no doubt that Trey Hendrickson, he's on par. He's on the level or close to it, in my mind, to Micah Parsons. Myles Garrett is better than Micah Parsons. And it's just because of the age. Micah's 26. Myles is, 29? And then
Yes.
Trey is 30 going on 31. And I was like, this is ridiculous because you
No,
look
it's
at
not.
Trey Hendrickson. If you look at Trey Hendrickson, when he plays, look at his baby face. He does not look like he's going to fall apart anytime soon. He really looks like he has a good 3-4 years easily. Very good 3-4 years.
Well, they don't really play much with their face.
But that is an indication of overall health. Look it up.
Yeah.
If he had a beard, would you think differently? I mean, he is clean shaven.
I mean, Whitworth looked like 60 when he
Right.
was 35. But
That's true.
that he was actually pretty healthy up until the end. In fact, I still think he can play.
Whitworth was an elite athlete, and I feel like that's what Trey doesn't get credit for. He is a really flexible, not the most explosive necessarily, but he's got speed and he's got flexibility and he's got power throughout
Yes.
all of his, where it counts, essentially. He's got core strength, he's got leg strength, he's got upper body strength. He takes care of his body extremely well. And that's why I think he's going to be fine in whatever capacity he does play in week one. It probably won't be a full-time role, but if he has to rush the passer 20 or so times, I think he'll be effective in that sense. But I think you're right, Daddy. I don't know if you were the original writer of that message that you wrote to me, but what you said from your account was correct. I think the fact that he didn't play so much in the first couple of years that he was in New Orleans, he finally emerged as a starter in year 4. He's only been a starter for about 5 years in his career, and again, he's just now 30 years old. I think he does still have a handful of good years left, and I feel like the Bengals are taking a big risk by not assuming that that's going to be the case. I think in their minds they're like, we're taking the safer route by just kind of going this year by year and seeing if he does fall off. But if he continues to be the same player that he's been for the past couple of years, and I don't think there's any indication that that's not going to be the case, then they pretty much force themselves to franchise tag him, make him even more mad because he's not getting the long-term guaranteed contract and everything like that. If they just paid him that now, I think there's a really good chance that contract would look really good in a year's time and maybe even 2 years' time. And I feel like it was wrong of them to not take that chance.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree. And I want to ask you something, John. Players are different,
Yeah.
Like Jesse Bates, when he was going through it with the Bengals, his regular season play went down a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Playoffs, he was amazing.
Yeah.
Do you think Trey Hendrickson is going to kind of have a grudge, be a little bit reserved, want to preserve his body? I mean, do you think it's going to affect his play this year, John?
I don't think so. I don't think he's really wired like that. I was curious if he was actually going to sit out this game if he didn't get paid a la Chris Jones from a couple of years ago. I guess the one scenario is that if he feels like if I ball out and the Bengals feel like they can't lose me next year, I'm probably going to get tagged. I don't know what the mental calculus in his mind would go if he'd be like, I need to not play that well just so they let me hit free agency and then I can get something resembling the contract that I want. Again, there's a lot of mental gymnastics there, and I don't think he's really thinking that far ahead. I'm really just thinking for him. I think he's just going to be who Trey Hendrickson always is, and that's just going 110 miles an hour every single snap.
Yeah. Well, that's who Myles Garrett is. I hope it's not who Trey Hendrickson is. But
Let's
I
go.
will say this. Okay. Trey Hendrickson, I'm not really concerned. Shamar looks really good, John. And Joseph Osai beat out Miles Murphy. So Joseph Osai could have a resurgence. I know that our good friend Joe Goodberry believes in Joseph Osai, which is a good sign. So we could have some pass rushes this year, John. And we have, I was just going to say, then we have the linebackers who I think Demetrius Knight, he is a playmaker. I think he'll figure it out. And Barrett Carter was showing great range. Go ahead, John. Yeah.
I think the edge room looks like how it probably was going to right after the draft. I think people obviously had questions about Trey and whether or not Myles Murphy is going to take a jump. But Joseph Ossai is just a better player than both Myles Murphy and Shamar Stewart right now. And that was the case last year. With Stewart, it's like you want him on the field just because he's just a ball of chaos. And he's probably the most athletic guy on their defensive line. He's probably more athletic than any offensive lineman out there. So you just want him running into guys, running into these gaps, shooting these gaps on these stunts and whatnot, just to cause chaos, just to free someone else up. Myles Murphy isn't quite that type of an athlete, which is why you need him to take that step technically and make sure that he has a plan of what to do because, again, he is a good athlete, but he's not the explosive ball of fire that Shamar Stewart is, which is why I think people assume that Shamar Stewart is going to play more or maybe potentially even start over Myles Murphy, but I like having Stewart as like that third edge that you bring in certain situations. And with Myles Murphy, I think it's probably the most disappointing that he did have like an injury, which has been kind of a theme for him in the past couple of preseasons and whatnot. It would have been nice to see him potentially beat out Joseph Ossai if he would have taken that step, but as of right now, it's like I think you look at Murphy and Stewart a little bit differently because they probably need to win in different ways. And I don't know if Stewart is actually a good football player yet. I just know that they view him as this guy that they need on the field because he can be a difference maker in a different way.
Yeah, I think so. I think you described it well, and I think they will throw him out there time to time because, I mean, he was getting through the line. I think a decent amount of time, but then other times he didn't know what he was doing. But
right.
There was times where he made plays that nobody else on our team can make. So, yeah. All right. So that is. Oh, and the linebackers, John. I don't know what you saw of Demetrius Knight. I liked what I saw in the practice. Obviously, the preseason, he looked a little confused. I think he's still a rookie. People want to treat him like he's not because he's like, what is he, 29, 30 something years old.
Close, 25.
But I think that it'll probably take 2-3 games, and he's going to look pretty good. John, are you feeling confident? Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, like they got Oren Burks right behind him, and I think that's a fine plan to just play more than you probably would have expected for a handful of weeks to see if Knight can catch up to speed. I'm really interested to see how much Bear Carter plays because he was getting reps with the ones along with Burks in some of these packages, and Carter looked really good in the preseason. Looked like it didn't look too fast for him, whereas with Knight, who, by the way, only had like 2 years of starting experience at the college level, and one of them was at Charlotte, one of them was at South Carolina. Barrett Carter was a 5-star recruit who played a lot of quality football at Clemson, and just because he was drafted 2 rounds later doesn't mean that I think we can look as Carter as like a inferior player to Knight. I think they're probably a lot closer than people would potentially have thought after the draft.
Fun fact about Demetrius Knight.
Yeah.
Cousins to the famous Gladys and the Pips. Yeah.
That is crazy. We got to get him on the show and do a cover of...
And Aretha Franklin is his cousin too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does he sing?
I'm sure. Yeah, I would assume.
He has no choice. All right. Finally, John, because we're talking a lot about the defense. Obviously, the offense, nothing... Well, we'll get to the offense. But the defense, the secondary, it looks like DJ Turner is emerging. Looks like, right? He's kind of this... I don't know. He's a starting corner now. And I think that Cam Taylor-Britt has his confidence back. He has that attitude back. And really, I guess more of the concerns with the safeties. I don't know if Geno Stone would bounce back, but... And that guy, what's his name? That Jordan Battle has not looked good in the preseason. So I'm not really sure. Yeah.
I mean, Battle's like, it's the same with Knight, where he looked really good in camp, and then once the game started, and for whatever reason, Al Golden was like, we're just going to just run whatever. Didn't look particularly good. But that's just what, like, that was their play at secondary, just kind of keep the same guys, and hopefully a more man-centric scheme, and with a lot less maybe rotations post-snap, maybe that helps them out, and kind of keeps them all on the same page. Again, I've been saying this since Al Golden was hired. I think Turner and Taylor-Britt are much better fits in this scheme as opposed to what Lute and Rumo had them doing, and that's why like the veteran quarterbacks like Awuzie and Apple, who are better in zone, I think they were just better fits in what Rumo wanted to do. So you have a really good nickelback in Dax Hill, who can also play on the boundary on some of your base packages. That was kind of teased a little bit in the preseason, despite, again, them not really showing what they're planning to do. But I think Taylor-Britt really likes what Al Golden wants to do, and I think the same with DJ Turner. And I think that is a good starting 3 for this scheme. I think with Josh Newton, there's lots to like about him. in a vacuum, but he's not the athlete that any of those three guys are, which is why he's probably more of a liability in some of these, and maybe just this defense in general, just to be a starter. But as your fourth cornerback off the bench, someone who really knows what to do and is locked in, you can do a lot worse than that.
Yeah. All right. I think we covered the defense. Evan McPherson, I'll just say really quickly, yeah.
I don't think that the zone defense is going to work well if we really are serious this year with Mahomes and some of the people that we're going to face. But, yeah, I basically agree with everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I condone and approve of John's message.
Well, I would say this. Evan McPherson, John, he talked about...
He's been kicking.
Yes. And he said how the devil will get in your head.
Yeah.
It was very fascinating. Did you hear that interview, John? He said the devil would get in my head.
Name drop Lucy?
Yes. And
He's talking about possession, demonic possession. I've experienced.
Yes.
I've done
He
exorcisms.
He said, and I know I can kick, but the devil would say, no, you can't. And then I just learned, to not listen to the devil.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating interview. And I just hope he, can do that during the season. He can focus on the bright side, on the light side.
Well, there are many devils, and once you defeat one, there's sort of a chain of command, and another devil will come, and that's why I have a payment plan for my exorcism stuff. Yeah.
This is why we do this show, because we find solutions that the Bengals players would never think of. But now that we are streaming to John's Twitter,
you guys didn't know about my payment plan. Many of you are possessed.
Can I just
That's
say
why you've
something?
been following John Sheeran. Will call me.
Do you know what our most live viewers ever was before today?
12.
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe like 30 or 40. Do you know what we're at right now?
1 million.
346
million.
That is the power of the John Sheeran. Okay.
Double stuff.
So I want to just quickly talk about the offense. Obviously, Joe Burrow had a healthy camp.
Yeah.
I don't think it's...
Barely.
I think it's, safe to not jinx that now.
Don't jinx it.
It's still a few more days, but... Jamar Chase, obviously, T. Higgins, they looked amazing.
Yeah.
The whole preseason. And then we have Mitch Tinsley added to the mix. He looks really good. Tight end situation, John.
Yeah.
Probably the best it's been in a while. Offensive line, clearly the best it's been, like you said, since 2015. It is solid all the way through. I mean, there's, it's potentially elite on the ends, I would say, on the tackles.
Yeah.
I would say that Orlando Brown and Amiris Mims could be close to elite.
Oh, yeah.
But in the middle, John, which I think is more important because of the way Joe Burrow plays, like he likes to slide around, so he needs that middle so he has a few seconds so that he can get out of the pocket. He doesn't need the tackles as much as some other quarterbacks. He doesn't stay in the pocket. So now that the middle is solid, and especially with Risner, what I love, John, I don't know if you brought this up, but the reason he was available is because he's okay overall, but he's very good at the pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're just going to be passing, except when we want to throw people off and get Chase Brown involved somehow in there.
It doesn't work so
Right?
well.
He's really no different than Alex Kappa at his best. I don't like the PR is definitely different because he's never been paid like Alex Kappa was, but there's not a ton of differences in their games when Alex Kappa was healthy. Like he was a quality starting right guard who was much better in pass blocking compared to just getting downhill and generating movement in the run game. And if I were to throw out, cautions about this offense, I still want to see them generate movement in the run game. I know that they've evolved the run game around Chase Brown's skill set. I feel like that's obviously the right thing to do because he is your feature back now, and he fits in a very cohesive way with marrying the run game and the pass game with his skill set. But I think the right side of the offensive line has something to prove in terms of being able to be reliant on in terms of running behind them. I think Amarius Mims needs to jump there. Again, it's not really Reisner's strength. It's definitely not Lucas Patrick's strength. It could be Jalen Rivers' strength if he were to somehow emerge there. But Dylan Fairchild looked really promising in the preseason. I'm tempering expectations a little bit because I think we're probably crowning him a little bit too early because, again, we haven't seen him in regular season action, but he definitely has the skill set to be a quality starting left guard in both phases, both the pass and the run. So I'm excited for Fairchild, but I need to see him probably prove it on a larger stage, and I need to see the offense line as a whole look better as a run blocking unit in order for this offense to really complete the evolution that it needs to complete.
But don't you think, John, the way that they play, right? I mean, you can have Chase Brown basically in there on what looks like pass plays, or just like, and they're going to be dumping off. I mean, he is like that prototype that I think Marshall Faulk potentially was the first, where it's like, not necessarily the workhorse back who's going to like barrel through lines, but he's that dual threat. He's built, somewhere in between, and I feel like, Chase Brown is such a good fit on the Bengals, as opposed to even the Joe Mixon, who's so talented, but because he blends in with the passing game so well. But I don't know.
I agree. Yeah. And I think just having P. Ryan kind of backing him up and being reliant in pass protection as a check down option, like there's no confusion about, are you like going to close out games with P. Ryan? Because I think you can do that with Chase Brown again in similar, pre-snap looks and everything like that. Taj Brooks is, I think, really promising as like if something were to happen, Chase Brown, you involve him a little bit more because he can run out of the eye. He can also run out of shotgun. And I think he's got something to prove in pass pro as well. So really like what the running back room looks, just even when it's just 3 deep, and they obviously got guys in the practice squad who are hungry if they were able to get snaps. So, but again, like there's no concern necessarily with the personnel with anyone on this offense outside of maybe some of their guards that need something to prove.
Well, there's one concern, as I think our good friend Zim Houday, he posted today that they voted for who's the best play caller, and Zack Taylor did not get 1 vote.
Who did?
Well, it doesn't matter because he lost. But what I'm saying, John, is that we have had this. You remember, especially early in the seasons, where it's everybody is piling on Zack Taylor because it's like, this looks like a Marvin Lewis offense again. And I think you told us it's because of the offensive line that limits what they can do. But sometimes it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. So is Zack Taylor going to hold back this potentially historical offense?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Zach does 95% of the things you want in a head coach really well. He manages the locker room, he manages his players, and I think for the most part he calls pretty good games. The majority of play callers in the NFL get scrutinized for one thing, and it's situational play calling, specifically 3rd and 4th down, and being aggressive when you should be conservative and vice versa. That's still something that he hasn't necessarily proved. I will again repeat that it's not just on him making these decisions. It's a collaborative effort, and Dan Pitcher gets more and more influential with as this goes on, and I think he's got a positive influence on the situation necessarily, so it should get better. But again, like this graph is undeniable. Like all pretty much most of those guys you would trust running your offense rather than Zack Taylor, just because those other guys are just more proven and they're just better, and the results show for themselves. But I think that Zach just is who he is, and it's just about the personnel just kind of making sure that the plays that he calls, that they can just execute them better. Like that's just kind of what it comes down to.
So the last 4 people just got 1 vote. I mean, there's 1 vote away from that being Zack Taylor.
Clint Kubiak is kind of interesting hype because it's only just been 1 year, and the Saints really tailed off there at the end. So I don't really know about that.
My real question here, Daddio, is well,
please,
like, what did you see last year that makes you so concerned? Because the offense did pretty good job.
Burrow. That was Joe Burrow. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's the line between Joe Burrow and the offense? I mean, anyways, my point is that was not the issue last year.
That's true.
The issue was the defense, and they were able to almost make the playoffs based on their offense alone. Now the offense is improved.
But John, wasn't it last year where we lost so many close games because we had turnovers late in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was last year.
It was because Evan McPherson was possessed by Satan.
It was that was part of it. But we also, John, I think it was at least 3-4 games where we had turnovers that kind of cost us the game. And with a more balanced attack, right, with more not just relying on Joe Burrow to save the day, we won't have as many of those.
You're going to be relying on Joe Burrow to save the day every single game.
No. But you want him to be doing it within. Look, Tom Brady is considered the greatest quarterback ever. You didn't see Tom Brady running around with a cape trying to rescue a team. He was doing it within something, within the system.
I agree. I think there are larger problems here. I don't think it's the offensive play calling.
Well, I think it's the offensive identity.
I think it's the ownership. No,
John?
I think. Listen, you come down to it. At the end of the day, let's not forget, this is a malnourished team in terms of talent on the defensive side of the ball.
And their pregnant wives are malnourished too, according to how they treat the. Yeah. All right. So I think we previewed everything that can be previewed, John. Well, we have a new long snapper, but other than that,
Well, that kind of messed things up last year too. The long snapper.
yeah.
There were a few mistakes that were made that cost us a lot.
So with that, I think we can move on to the first week. We're facing the Cleveland Browns. In Cleveland.
Oh God.
And we know that they have been Joe Burrow's kryptonite, but the Browns are a mess overall, franchisally. But they do have Joe Flacco in there. They do have
Yeah.
Joe Flacco, veteran quarterback. John, Joe Flacco looked amazing the last time he played until the playoffs. You would agree. I mean, he looked,
Yeah,
considering,
they agree,
everything, he looked very good. Very good. He made a lot of big plays, which he
Yeah.
can probably torch this Bengals defense
Yeah.
if he feels comfortable.
The one thing about it is that that was when the Browns still had a good offensive line coach and a decent offensive line, and I just don't know if that union is quite as good. I think the personnel is not that much different, but the guys are just older and they're a little bit less athletic. So I could be proven completely wrong, but Stefanski's scheme, rolling out these play action bootlegs and everything like that, like Flacco's older, how well can he execute that? How well can the offensive line execute that? How well can they be taught? Those are variables that, in my mind, I'm picturing the Browns offense kind of executing that when Flacco was kind of on his game in 2023, and that's giving me pause. And that could definitely happen, but there's also okay, that was 2 years ago. I don't know how much juice the personnel still has in order to do that, but it's definitely a concern. I don't think this is necessarily it is the Browns, and they were the second worst team in the league last year, but I don't think that this is an offense where the Bengals defense out of all units can be it'll be fine.
And
Yeah.
let's not forget, the reason why the Browns always had our number was because of their rush. Their pass rush was so good.
Deflecting passes.
And we're hoping that things are better for the Bengals this year in terms of the offensive line, as John has said. But
Yeah.
may I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I remember a little game last year. It was against the Washington Commanders. And if everybody remembers, that was supposed to be an easy win for the Bengals, and Jaden Daniels at that time was an unknown entity. And you have to remember, one curse of the Cincinnati Bengals is that they are always the breakout team for young talent to come and show everybody how great they are. I don't know why it always happens to them. And this Shamar Sanders kid, I think, has the potential to be one of the greats. So if he comes out and plays, if he comes out and he plays against the Bengals, watch out. Watch out.
That'd be
And
great
that
if he
is
plays, because he's definitely not ready. He was not ready in the preseason.
Yeah, but he could surprise you, John.
He would definitely surprise me, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think they're going to ease him in, John. I think they're going to use him as a little secret weapon. But speaking of secret weapons, we didn't talk about Jermaine Burton, who just had a great camp and then disappeared. He had an injury. But he could be a little secret weapon too.
Wait, is he okay now?
Nobody really knows what happened to him, how he is now.
Mystery.
John. Yeah.
It's just his knee. It was bruised, I think.
Okay.
And they
Little
re-injured it in
boo-boo.
preseason.
We call that in the
I wouldn't
NFL a
imagine he
boo-boo.
plays very much in week one. He's still behind Charlie Jones as the kickoff returner, and that would be where he would contribute the most. Charlie Jones obviously did return a 100-yard kickoff for a touchdown in last year's game in Cleveland, so that could happen again.
Wow.
Yeah.
One can only
Alright.
hope.
Well, John, is
John.
there anything else to talk about?
Nope. This is still the Bengals, and I refuse to believe that they win a week one game until they do it. So
Oh, yeah, we didn't get your prediction.
that is my prediction. I need to see it to believe it.
He's saying loss.
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying I need to see them win before I predict a win.
All right.
Okay.
Dr. Hoji.
Dr. Hoji's horoscope is Bengals lose, Browns win. The trudgery and drudgery of life continues because it is endless.
Okay. Wow.
And you, Daddy?
Well, I will say that I think that Joe Burrow is a very self-aware, or I should say,
Yeah.
in a way, petty person.
Petty.
He doesn't like losing. He doesn't like being embarrassed.
No.
He holds grudges.
Yeah.
like with the Martin Winkendale guy, where he said, oh, we're not going to give him a gold jacket yet, and then Joe Burrow went out through like for 600 yards, or I think John, it was Denzel Ward or these other Browns cornerbacks, right, where he said they talk a lot, and then he went out and finally beat them. So I think Joe Burrow is going to be locked in. I think he played in the preseason specifically for this game.
Yeah.
He played because he wants to be ready to roll. He doesn't want to have that rust that he's always had. So I think that he knows that Myles Garrett is he's got to worry about him. And I think, what is that, the Marius Mims side, John, that he rushes from?
He's all over the place.
He's
He
all
could
over
be
the
up
place,
against
yeah.
Take Harris.
They'll move him around.
Yeah. Well, that's not good. But I still think that, like you were saying, the offensive line. So I think, John, I think that it's going to be a very solid game for Joe Burrow and the offense. And I think that, they'll be able to hold Flacco. He's kind of a trick pony. He has the deep passes and not much else. So yeah, I see the Cincinnati Bengals winning
Oh,
31-28.
wow.
Yeah, that's my
You
prediction.
didn't do the whole,
winning?
Yeah, I
you
see
didn't
them
do-
winning.
You didn't do the whole thing.
No,
Does winning mean whining?
no, they're going to win the game.
Like they have more points than the opposing team when the game ends.
Yeah, they're going to end up with more points. Yes, they're going to win the game. Yes.
I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is really all that we have for this show. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and go to our Patreon. If you become Patreon, you can get these music that we make. And also subscribe on iTunes and leave us a review. We will share your review on the show. That's all we have for this show. So long. See you next time. Sweetie. Bye.